hashtag. Sometimes that's a dangerous thing to pick your own hashtag sometimes. Oh my gosh. I have a friend that was using a hashtag the other day. Whew, that was not the right hashtag to use. Anyway, we are here tonight with a very last minute program, and I am very, very happy to be able to talk to Alex Paris, who is the creative. He's going to tell me his title here. We put this together so quickly, but he's a creative producer. He is with the Stonewall Democratic Club. I'm assuming Alex is in LA. Let's just find out right now and bring him on. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for putting all the effort in to get on here, because I think literally I saw the tweet by your president there, Alex, and say his last name for me. He'll kill me that I don't.
Alex Mahajer.
Yes, Alex Mohajer. I say I'm terrible with names, and I'm a host. But Alex and I have done some stuff together on Haps here, and Alex is just an amazing guy. And I saw him retweet a tweet about this situation, and I'm like, oh, we need to talk about this. So I really would love if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and then why are we here? What's going on? Because you and I, and you especially, we may be on the pulse of what's happening. But hopefully, there's people that'll watch this show that don't even know what this is about and will want to get involved.
Yeah, so today, Stonewall went to Netflix's campus in Hollywood in solidarity with their Team Trans employee resource group, who walked off the job today in response to um, the recent uh, launch of Netflix's special with Dave Chappelle titled The Closer. It is the fourth special in series that he did for them, in which he repeatedly uh, attacked the trans community, um, you denying trans experience, misgendering trans persons, including people who he personally calls friends. And essentially just continuing a pattern of disrespectful treatment of the trans community, um, all couched as comedy,
Hmm.
and the the Team Trans ERG at Netflix was very appalled um, by this special, as they should be, and uh, they reached out to the leadership at Netflix, who responded somewhat flippantly in a manner that you wouldn't expect an organization that takes its LGBT and trans leadership seriously.
Hmm.
So we we've been watching the situation evolve over the last week or two, um, and we put together a statement of support for uh, for the for the Team Trans group at Netflix, and we also showed up in person with a few hundred other people uh, at Netflix's campus in Hollywood, and we had a, a long series of speakers led by Ashley Murray Preston, who's a good friend of mine, and I respect
Oh,
her
awesome.
a great deal.
Hmm.
And and we made our voices heard. We sent a message that we're not gonna sit back and watch the trans community get bullied and get dismissed in such a way.
Well,
Uh,
in the name of like what, profit or something? Like, I mean, seriously, like, because
I'm
I know Google gave up their "Do No Evil" slogan or whatever a while ago, and I mean, it's corporate America. If anybody knows me, me and corporate America don't ever agree. But but it is kind of shocking, sitting here even in Chicago and be like, what the, you know what? You can swear in here. What the fuck? Like, um, no, like it doesn't even make any sense. And I'm hearing things from people, and we're here in the Midwest, and I was talking to some people even about, putting this show together, And they're like, but it's comedy and, whatever, right? They have their, they haven't seen it or whatever that they're doing. But the point is, I don't even know how the show gets on the air. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how that gets past the dude editing the shit. And I mean, I'm not passing judgment on Dave Chappelle and whether he's funny or not or any of that stuff. I'm just saying that what we see on there, like, how did that not just fall on the cutting room floor? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. Because, like you said, a company like Netflix, they have the appearance of being pretty damn progressive in a lot of ways. And it's got to be just on top of everything else. It's just got to fucking hurt to be an employee of Netflix and to have this happen. Forget all the politics and all of that around it. It's just got to be a fucking gut punch, So I'm just super glad you folks have been supportive.
Yeah, I think uh, as a user, I am disappointed that they would allow an artist to dedicate l- fully half of the time of the runtime of this special to attacking the trans community in such a way. Um, for someone who claims to respect the trans community, Dave Chappelle did not live up to what I would expect someone who respects me personally. I'm a member of the LGBT community. I'm not trans,
Mhm.
but I'm a member of the LGBT community, and my trans siblings all largely are hurt by this special and by the content of this special. The the special last week was in the top 10 of all the content that was viewed on the Netflix platform, and Netflix has
Wow.
209 million active users that they they are pushing this to. So hundreds of millions of people have seen this special and are either appalled by what they're seeing as our as one of our trans leaders, Mallory Robinson, put in our statement, the 2% of people of trans experience are deeply wounded by this special, or they feel like it's normalized, that it's okay to belittle and mock trans experience on Netflix.
Um, the half. I mean, I have not seen it, right? I've only seen clips, right? But just to and I'm definitely gonna watch it. And I apologize to people that I haven't watched it, but literally we put this together, and this is something that I have been following. The the yeah, I mean, I guess you can't. I mean, if you have to cut a half the show out, I guess the show doesn't go on. But I mean, should the show have gone on Netflix? That would be my question to what is his name? Reed. I can't think of the head of Netflix right now, but I mean that. Um, this is not a subject that I think most Americans have a good handle on. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a country where these things are, make CNN or something and tell it, it is a big deal, right? And so, and again, not defending anybody, at all, but that the American understanding of trans people and transphobia and all of that, it's pretty low. So, I just it man, really, did they need to make, like, first of all, again, personalities and everything aside, like, did they really need that freaking money? They all have so much money, just like, let's just redo that. You know what I mean? Like, let's do your last show. That okay? That just, I mean, I've had those days, even on this show, where I have said something stupid or didn't realize what I was doing or being offensive, and as soon as I catch it, I try to fix it. Right? That should have been the fucking thing they did after that show. Was like, oh shit, we just taped that. Somebody burned this shit and Dave come back out tomorrow, whatever, right? I mean, I'm not going to be the boss of what everybody has to do. But I do want to say, Carmen here says, in all fairness, so many of us watched it because of the controversy. I would have never watched it otherwise. Sorry, so many of us watched it, not use. I'm going to let you answer that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Many people have said that the special should not have aired. I think that the important thing here is that Ted Sandros, who's co-CEO at Netflix, has made it clear that it's not something that they're interested in interfering with, in particular Dave's artistic merit in, as it were, in creating this special. They're defending their content and they're defending their decision to air it as is. Um, what's important is that the trans leadership at Netflix is saying they don't want the special taken down. What they want are changes made internally at Netflix that
Mm-hmm.
make that workspace safe um and welcoming to them. And they've issued a list of issues that they want to have made changes at Netflix in order to create an environment that's more conducive to their working. They want things like uh, developing especially a specific fund to fund trans talent and leadership at Netflix, specifically for above and below the line talent. Um, in addition to their current creative equity fund, they want increase investment into the content that comes on Netflix that is promoted and in par with content that is considered, problematic, like the special that they put out for with Dave Chappelle. They want to see additional investment in trans creators on the platform, and they want labels for the content that is transphobic and homophobic.
Mm-hmm.
We have labels for that
Mature
Netflix has put
audiences
for
and
mature
right, right.
audiences. We have labels for, trigger warnings for sensitive groups like
Right.
eating disorders and suicide. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for the leadership at Netflix to include a transphobia and homophobia warning
I
at the
mean,
head of
look,
content
I'm
that.
only laughing at the ridiculousness of the idea that a company would have to say, by the way, this is going to be very harsh and cruel to a group of people. So we're warning you, or that group of people, not to watch it. We're not thinking about whether we should do that. And I like, because I did read that in the statement, in the list of what that was wanted, is there was no mention of Dave Chappelle in specific, or the show itself, because the quicker, I think, in some ways, that we can get off of that in that way, and focus on, I think, to me, and I'm not, I got nothing in this fight except that I'm kind of disgusted and wanted to have it out there, and and I've got skin in the game because I think, I try to be a decent human being, but I think that um it doesn't, I mean, I'm completely at a loss to even understand how a corporation could, you fuck up, you own up, right? And now, I can't imagine what it must feel like to go into work when your bosses let that on the air, right? I mean, and building an environment at Netflix that seemed, from my little bit of understanding, like it was a kind of a workable thing. There was a process. It was in motion, and trans people, were working at Netflix, and it seems like that was kind of working. And then all of a sudden to have this happen, like, it shocks me, and I just can't imagine just how painful and hurtful it is. And I think, to me, that's the thing that I wish everybody would think about in this situation is, what would you feel like if X, Y, and Z, was put out, and that was something that was deeply offensive to you or to these heads of these companies or whatever. So yeah, I don't even want to pass my judgment on here. I just want the information out. And Carmen says, because I'm a 55-year-old, mostly straight white guy, like shit. I'm the guy that, I'm like the guy that's sitting there at the head of Netflix in the sense of, who I am and my background. But I'm just trying to get people to kind of be aware, for goodness sakes, about how crazy all this sounds, right? I mean, if you made this into a movie, you'd be like, what? No corporation would do that in 2021. But I did put a tweet out there, I think late last night. You know, in 2025, we will be a quarter century into the new millennium, not the new century. And women, black women, trans women, Latinas, they don't have fucking equal rights in 2025. That's in the future. We're not going to get it in the next 4 years. I hate to say that, but it's probably true. And how is that possible? Right after, women got the freaking vote in 1921, right? But I mean, that's about it. And there's still pay disparity and all this stuff. So just a fucking man to everybody that is digging into this issue and trying to make a difference. Carmen says, Alex, did you watch it? My apologies. I came on a few minutes into the broadcast.
Yes, I did watch the special. As the public relations chair at Stonewall,
At Stonewall.
I made it my business to know what was said in that special, and I watched it top to bottom, and I had heard certain things about the special in advance of that, and I went in with my expectations pretty low. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've been familiar with Dave's work for many years, and seeing fully half of a 62-minute runtime spent just belittling a group of people, and watching hundreds of people in an audience laugh at it heartily, mm, you broke my heart. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think I think that the danger here, beyond just like, oh, we're making bad content that's offensive, there is a real danger for people in marginalized communities to have this kind of, you know, dressing down and marginalization occur to them and have it normalized. I think that when people like Dave Chappelle are paid $20 million to stand up in a room in Detroit and make these kinds of jokes in front of 400 or 500 people, and then 209 million other people have access to watch this unfettered and unedited, and it makes an environment where
It
people
makes for a
feel
dangerous
emboldened.
environment.
Yeah, people feel emboldened.
I mean, statistically, and I don't have those stats in front of me, so I'm just going to make some little generalizations. But statistically, a trans woman, um, you know, it's just dangerous, in this country to be a trans woman, and you do not need. Um, I mean, I have friends that are comedians. I understand that the nature of comedy generally isn't like happy go lucky, right? I mean, the nature of comedy usually is I'm making fun of somebody, or you know what I mean? That's that, I mean, I guess you can have non-negative comedy. I'm sure it exists, but I mean that's kind of who we are or whatever as people. But at a certain point when, and again, not at all, I'm like thinking back to, like, let's say the 1970s or something, right? And I mean, we saw things that were progressive occasionally, but we saw a lot, that wasn't. And we have come not far enough, but we've come pretty far, in terms of as a culture of starting to understand other people, other genders, other ideas. I'm not saying the progress has been great, but there's kind of been some forward progress. Like, we're moving a little bit, way too slow. And then for this just doesn't make sense. Like from a branding standpoint, from a just like making Netflix look good or bad standpoint. But apparently the audience in, I'm not even going to say red state, blue state, whatever. Apparently, a big chunk of their audience, this is important enough to them that they wanted to deliver that product to them. And I don't know. Does that bring in views? Does that bring in more monthly subscriptions or what? But I mean, it just, I'm stunned like you are as to why it would even happen. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, specifically to the to the broader people that watch this special and see Dave Chappelle, attacking the trans in the way that he did, he specifically, these people specifically are coming off the back of 4 years of Donald Trump running around and belittling women, belittling the Asian community, belittling all kinds of marginalized people, including the trans community, but more specifically, the Asian community on the back of the coronavirus pandemic suffered greatly, has seen murders, and has seen an increase in violence uh, in the in the realm of seeing their communities, attacked. And
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
trans community, like you said, is already marginalized and is already, suffers greatly. 2020, according to Human Rights Campaign, was the most violent year for the trans community on record. All
You know
that
what's
in the context of a pandemic,
mhm.
the
Right, right. Well, and you know what's scary about that number is I would imagine that I hope it was never worse before, but we're counting now. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like those numbers are only recently counted. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
police departments or whoever counts this stuff, wouldn't even note it. So that 2020 was the worst does not surprise me at all, based on where the politics and what the past 4 years were. And I really, you really that is a stark contrast when you talk about 4 years ago, because I can really think that I live in on the north side of Chicago in a community called Andersonville, and Andersonville was settled by a bunch of Swedes, like 100 years ago. And in the 80s, Andersonville became a place where lesbian women, kind of started to settle and kind of congregate. And they created, because you have Boys Town, Chicago's famous, right, for Boys Town, further south, in Lakeview. But Andersonville really has this marvelous little community of all kinds of people. You know what I mean? It's just loving and wonderful, and it's just a great place. But we have problems here, and everybody here is trying for the most part, right? So that's the thing that we want is people need to try, right? And this is not trying. This is going backwards. This is not trying. This is not even staying neutral. This is going backwards. And after everything that trans um, trans women have gone through over the last 4 years. I mean, it's kind of offensive. It's about all
It absolutely is. I think that when you take into account the very dangerous lives that trans people lead already, they're marginalized all, like, across the board. You know, the incidence of suicide, the incidence of violence, the incidence of murder that we see in the trans community outpace uh, our trans siblings, cisgender peers. Uh,
sure.
those those kinds of things make it incredibly difficult for someone who's who is living a trans experience to look forward to their 35th birthday. The
Mm.
average lifespan for a trans woman of color is 35 years.
Are
Today
you shitting me?
today is the birthday of one of my colleagues, Blossom. She turned 35 today. She's a black trans woman, and she turned 35 today, and she's beating these odds, and we have to make our community safe for, you know, all LGBT people to be able to thrive, not just survive.
Right. Right. And all um all of the work, from Stonewall till today, it's been a long, tough struggle, and of course, there there have been setbacks along the way, but I don't know. It's really hard for me, Alex. I'm in Chicago. You're in LA, right?
Yeah,
And I know there'll be people in the East and different places that are watch this, but it's so like just it's so unbelievable to me sitting here, right? You know what I mean? And somebody that's been kind of active in politics and all of these things for a long time. It just totally blindsides somebody. Alex, I was disturbed by so much of it, but also the use of his friend who killed herself. I was just thrown. I felt bad after watching it, especially after hearing the controversy. I haven't seen it, so you'll have to explain that if you would like to.
yeah. I think what Carmen is talking about specifically is the anecdote that Dave uses in the special to sort of give himself a license to attack the trans community, because he has this trans friend who supported him even when he made transphobic jokes, who showed up to his stand-up specials, who was invited by him to give uh, to perform, um, and he felt that knowing her and knowing that she killed herself, that gave him license to misgender her, that gave him the right to attack the trans community, and to couch that in the nuance of trying to say, um, oh, she was a member of my community, she was a comedian, and she killed herself. That is deeply disturbing. It is incredibly sad that this person committed suicide, and I don't know anything of any of the details beyond what he gave us anecdotally in the
Right.
special, but I find it offensive that he would use the memory of someone in such a way to further his license to attack the rest of what inexorably is her community. I can't speak for her, but
Mhm.
I would imagine that before your profession comes your identity. And in something he said in the special, quoting her, he said she turned to him at one point and said, "I don't need you to understand me. I need you to understand that I'm having a human experience." And for him to deny her that experience in death, for him to deny that
Mhm.
experience for millions of gender nonconforming people across the world, uh, is an affront to her memory, I think, and is an affront to the many people who live trans experience, who have lost their lives at the hands of violence in America specifically. 202 uh, trans persons were murdered or died of violent assault in 2020.
And
So,
based on what did you say? Something like 2% of the population would
and that's,
be
yeah, they're
right.
2% of the American population.
Yeah. So I mean that number 202 is pretty significant when you think about that kind of number, especially based on murders per thousand per group, right? I
Right.
mean, it's probably just and Carmen says, and Carmen, I so appreciate you chiming in on this, especially because this all came together at the last minute, and it is really nice to have another voice in here and that has seen the program. Exactly, she says. They say yes, license She opened for his show. They became friends, and Dave uses the story to justify why he can talk so horribly about women in the trans community. I can't even make, honestly, Alex, I can't even make the connection how you can say, I have a friend who is trans, and you know what? It also makes me think of the power dynamic. Okay. Here's a guy that gets $20 million per episode. And now, and I mean, genuinely, he's friends with this person or whatever, right? I'm not, I don't know all the details here, but when you're like worth hundreds of millions of dollars and you take somebody under your wing, um, it's hard to say. I literally, can relate to the experience of having people who are. I've made a lot of connections out in Hollywood lately. You know what I mean? And having people who could be younger than me, but can mentor me. Do you know what I mean? Like, and the power dynamic is, yeah, I'm 55, they're 30, but they're very successful in music or film or whatever, right? And it's like people would be like, well, how is that person a mentor? Because they have this knowledge that I want to know. He had something that he could give to them and he took it away. Like that just, in that the way that you tell it, there's a power dynamic there. How could she necessarily had say no? She's getting to open for him. She's getting to be around him and trying, obviously wants to be a comedian. How do you say no to Dave Chappelle, right? Even if you might personally think there's something wrong here. I mean, that just becomes equated with every other excuse we use to justify something stupid by blaming it on the person that's the actual victim. Because that's what that feels like to me. Is in essence, it's yeah, but I gave him all these breaks. Yeah, well, they couldn't say no to you, man. And I'm not talking about Dave Chappelle. I'm talking about any situation. How could I say no? I need something from you. I want something from you, and you've got the generosity to give it to me, and then you end up, that's not what it's about, whatever. So yeah, that's just sorry, I'm ranting here a bit, but
I mean, it's certainly rattling, and it's certainly uh, disappointing to see someone who who you might respect uh, as a professional, as a peer in your in your profession, but we also have to account for, you know, his blatant disrespect for the people in that community. You know, she may have been able to forgive his inability to provide her community, her the trans community, respect, but she but where she didn't where she was able to get past that, many other people are saying this isn't okay with us, right? Like
right. Right. And we can't
the
judge her for, like we don't know her and we don't know what her thinking was. And I'm just making some in assumptions about power and dynamics and stuff like that. We have no idea, what that is. I mean, we're just kind of laying out some possible scenarios. But we both been on the earth long enough to know and been in situations where we might have been the person in power or somebody else was the person in power. But again, to me, it's so much about understanding, and I mean, I take this stuff, pretty seriously because I'm a somebody that's interested in these things and interested in things like psychology and understanding these kind of dynamics and trying to kind of walk the line between being woke and being in the way, and being an ally versus really being what I kind of think of myself as more of a co-conspirator, and really trying to maneuver through the shit that people like me have put out for a long time and figure out how to be something more, you know what I mean? And how to be helpful how I can. Even having you on here, this is something, that I can kind of do to let this come out, and to just not to have a friend, for God's sakes. Again, I'm not talking about anybody in specific now, but to have a friend that's different and to disrespect them in death, um, I mean, it just, yeah, it's just beyond the. It's. I just I don't understand it, and I'm not going to be able to understand it. I'm just able to bring the message out there. I'll let you talk, and then we can read Carmen's comment.
I mean, I at the end of the day, you know, as a person who doesn't, as a cisgender man, it's not my place to tell the trans community how to feel. I'm here
Right.
to listen. I'm here to stand with them, and I'm here to get the message out that we're not gonna stand by and wait for more violence or brutality to be wrought against our siblings, our trans and gender nonconforming siblings. We're going to definitely stand with them. We're going to fight with them. We're going to march with them, and we're going to demand better of the people in power who create environments that are unsafe for our communities.
I I think the again, we were talking about kind of the nature of comedy, and it's kind of tends to be something that we put people down, and I mean it's human nature, and I mean there's funny shit out there, there's very funny people, and I get negotiating that line between what's funny and what's offensive, and that even what's offensive in terms of the right to say it and all of these things, right? All of these things that we could get into the details and the minutia of arguing all this stuff. But to me personally, if I were doing something and 98% of it, kind of walked in there just fine, but then there's this other 2% where this group where it's like, I'm just going to I'm not going to go there. You know what I mean? Like, because they have had, issues and problems. It's a group that's still trying to gain acceptance or whatever. I'm like, again, like, what? Just think a little, for God's sakes. And again, without, um, like, really, like, there couldn't be other shit that's funny. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, like, why are we even going here? Carmen says, here's a question: do you make any connection between his toxicity? Oops, um, and the black community? I'm a black woman and saw it because I was hearing such horribleness from family and friends about the show. So I'm curious what you might think.
um, that's a really interesting question. I I can't really speak to uh, how the Black experience and its sort of regular and normalized homophobia and transphobia play out in power dynamics in the Black community. Uh, but I think that there's something to be said about creating environments where you have access and uh, where you get to interact with people who are different from you. Uh, and it seems that Dave has had ample opportunity to have that. He, like you said, is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He got paid $20 million for this special at Netflix. He's done three others at Netflix, and several of which have received heavy criticism from the trans community for their content. He simply doesn't care. Uh, well, I don't want to let me correct the record. He says he cares very much, but then he
Hmm.
also cares more about using his platform to cudgel the trans community, uh, regardless of how much he says he cares.
Wait a minute. Hold on. So this is this is this is something that he said.
Yeah, he says he's not indifferent to the pain of others. He says he's
Mhm.
not. Um, he calls himself a feminist in the special, but he also
Hmm.
makes sure to call himself a trans exclusive radical feminist, which is a term that was developed in the 70s in the women's movement by lesbians and women who were specifically uh, against including women of trans experience
Hmm.
uh, from the women's movement, um, and he's sort of picked his side. You know, he's determined that what's more important to him is that the women around him are what him and other turfs, trans exclusive radical feminists would conclude are real women, and
Right,
I think
right.
that that's
They're the
dismissive of the
arbitrators,
yeah,
turfs of what a woman is. Right.
right.
Yeah.
And
Um,
there's something, he conflates gender and sex, uh, as he does in the special um, when he defends J.K. Rowling in this special. Uh, he conflates gender and sex as immutable characteristics, and they're not. Like
can you
the science is out there.
right, and can you do me a favor for the audience members out there that will see this that don't quite understand, that concept, for that idea between the two, because I think there'd be a lot of people that don't really kind of understand that dynamic
Yeah,
between sex and gender.
so so I think the simplest way to put it is sex is what's between your legs.
Yeah,
It's
say
what
it
you were
however you
born
need
with.
to.
Sex is what's between your legs, what you were born with, what your genetic markers determine how your biology presents at birth, and gender is how society expects you to play a role. So women are women because they play the role of women in society as expected by by a patriarchal society,
The
that
white dudes that
women wear
make the
dresses
rules.
and wear makeup and put on
Right.
heels and what have you, and that men wear pants and do hard labor uh, and don't have feelings or whatever. But
Right, 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 right. Women can have feelings, but not X, and men can have X, but not feelings. I mean, it's what the culture, like you said, in the patriarchy, kind of determines the way that they want to see things. Um, and I think for people, and I'm going to be straight here, and I'm going to be honest. This is not something that I just was able to grasp. Do you know what I mean? Like it is something that you kind of have to think about, and that makes it challenging, for the average person, to to have to devote any time to thinking about it. But I mean, the idea. Oh wait. Okay. I just want to say, Mac, hearing all of this J.K. Rowling's death of his trans friend talk of what makes a woman, see how it makes you want to see it. I wish I hadn't seen it after the fact, but I needed to see it so I can fight it. And thank you again, Carmen, for putting that out there, because it is it's just it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't have enough experience within the specific situation to speak to it too much, but all I can do is kind of speak from where I have been to where I'm trying to go. And I think that for everybody that is trying to make a conscious effort to understand things other than the black and white male female world that we think we live in, that we've never lived in ever. I mean, if you think about even people that are transexed, right? You can have, some people are born with a penis and a vagina. Like it actually happens. And for most, even for some of those people, they don't find out that they were born with both until years later when they're told that immediately after they were born, the doctor decided which sex they were going to assign the child, right? When in fact, what if they were wrong? And what if the child had, I'm just saying, like, ovaries and things that, would make them from a hormonal, you know what I mean? Like you just willy nilly for thousands of years, the doctors have just said, "Ooh, that's not normal. Let's try to make it as normal as we can." So, yeah, there's never been a male and a female and a black and white thing. Like that's not how people are, but that's how we want to be. They want to pigeonhole us to be. So, anyway, I'm talking too much. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think that the more we study gender and sex, the more broad and beautiful the paint palette that we have to color with and celebrate uh, everyone's individual identity, it becomes clearer. More and more we see people, young people coming out of the closet at younger ages, and that's because we've worked so hard for recognition and for the the basic uh, the basic respect that we all deserve as people in a society. Uh, whether or not we have whatever you identify as on the on on the gender spectrum, whatever you identify as in the LGBT community, you should have a safe space to live your life, be respected, and and thrive. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Right.
we and at the end of the day, that's my foremost concern, is that my trans and gender nonconforming siblings
Mm-hmm.
have a space in the world to be their best selves.
Right.
And
Yes, I think that's a beautiful way to put it too, because I think people think that this beautiful rainbow, for goodness sakes, this beautiful world of differences that we have, if we allow these differences to float to the surface and be a part of the culture, that somehow that's going to make them different or feel, you know what I mean? Like it just people just like I don't it doesn't matter. People just want to be able to be, right? They just want to be able to feel safe. It's like I hate to equate things to things, but it's I say this all the time. Everybody should have a floor, a roof, heat, air, food, and healthcare on the whole planet. Okay? From there, you can figure that shit out. But there is enough wealth on the planet that nobody should suffer. And in that same vein, you know, nobody's nobody's trying to tell you that you can't be a cis white male that likes women. Nobody's saying that, right? People are just saying we want our own space. We want to be able to be. Leave us alone. Don't murder us. You know what I mean? Don't do the. I mean, again, I'm going to say stuff that's wrong here, and anybody that wants to correct me can correct me. But I'm just going from my heart here in trying to, not equate what other people think, but just what I would think. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want, don't just let me have my space and don't get in the other person's space. Let that other person have space too. And sorry, it just I don't understand people that don't get it. You know what I mean? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like our baseline should be good and love and openness and inclusiveness. And I don't know. Most days I think that's not the baseline for people. So
I mean, there's something to be said about the fear that's propagated by by the global push to right-wing authoritarianism.
hmm
Uh, we see it over and over again in places like Brazil, in places like Poland, in in and in places like Russia, where you have the the executives in these countries choosing to target uh, minorities, choosing to target LGBT people, choosing to target uh, trans communities for oppression, and and otherizing them in order to cement power in themselves. We have to be able to stand up and say, you know, we don't accept this. We demand an equitable world where myself and you and our trans siblings can seek
Flourish.
out to flourish and to seek out life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, like that may not work for, you know, an international community, but like
Right.
this we're in the United States, and those are the basics of the basic
Those
fundamental
are
building blocks of our society.
Right, those are the words they wrote down. Whether they meant them at the time for anybody other than white, gentried landowners may be open for debate, but those are the words that are on the paper. And those are the words that I would think everybody should demand. You know what I mean? Like, forget what those dudes wrote, a couple of hundred years ago from their context. Those words in this context means everybody has the right to what those words say, and to fight for that, hell yeah. I mean, it's sad that, just like I made the statement about women in 2025, we'll still not have anything looking even approaching equity, for God's sakes. That we're still there is just asinine and stupid. And anyway, I'm trying not to be angry here. I'm just trying to present something that is honest and open and educational and informational and understanding and loving. And it's just because we've got about 8 minutes left here, and I want to be able to let people know too, because Alex, your president, was a broadcaster on here, and just just awesome guy. I love Alex. He's amazing, and I was very excited to hear what he is doing. But I wanted you to be able to just talk a little bit about Stonewall Democratic Club and what you guys are about and what you do, because people are gonna see my little promos and stuff like that. So talk a little bit about um, you all folks there.
Yeah, absolutely. The Stonewall Democratic Club is the one of the nation's oldest and largest LGBTQ and feminist political advocacy organizations. It was founded in 1975, and we have a large and diverse membership that is out there seeking to promote uh, democratic values, democratic candidates in the United States, uh, to promote and protect the rights of men and women and people on all across the gender spectrum, uh, through the advancement of democratic norms and democratic politics.
Does
Big D democratic.
Yeah, Big D. Do you does Stonewall endorse candidates? Do you back candidates, or is it
Yeah,
more? Yeah, you do. Okay,
we deal mainly with uh, local candidates in Los Angeles County,
gotcha.
but we also look at statewide races as well as uh, top of the ticket in national politics. Um, we invite
Sorry, just
every Democrat.
national politics. Man, that's a tough one to weave through. Jesus.
It is. I mean, thankfully our mandate uh, doesn't require us to vet every Democrat in office, um,
Hmm.
but uh, we're concerned with the California Senate, we're concerned with the California Assembly, we're concerned with city council races, we're concerned with
Hmm.
our uh, our county officials, and we're concerned with who wants to seek the nation's highest office. Uh, and we invite all anyone who is interested in running for office as a Democrat to seek our endorsement, to take our test and speak to our endorsement panels, and
Right.
make sure that that you're up to snuff to what true democratic progressivism looks like today.
Eh, I like that because if you're a candidate actually and you're watching this, taking the test and interviewing with the organization, maybe you're not there yet, but maybe you will be after you do it, right? I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, open your eyes a little bit, open your ears a little bit, open your heart a little bit, and just jump into it and see, because at the end of the day, we're all people, and we all want certain things. And I love that, that you're looking at, especially at the local level and the grassroots level, because I was just listening to something and everybody like, oh, on NPR, of course, that's who I'm generally going to be listening to. But the just this idea of something like 900 like medical um kind of positions across the country, that, maybe like, I don't know, like a medical director for a county or something, right? Have like been forced out or resigned because we're seeing like the Trump shit, it's not over. You know what I mean? Those folks were emboldened by Trump. They're not stopping because he's not president. And in fact, they're going hard after school boards, after county boards, after, city
Election boards.
councils in all of these towns, and trying to pad them with their bullshit, with their, with their stupidity, with their ignorance. And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, I'm not, I vote Democratic. I vote Democrat. But yeah, I people know when you're on the show, I make Mao Zedong look like a conservative. And then I said that to a friend the other day, and they're like, "Yeah, I mean, you can't even compare me to anybody." You know what I mean? But like, I'm pretty radical in a lot of things, and I'm very disappointed with the Democrats a lot. But it's what we've got, and I love the progressive movement in a lot of ways that we're seeing in Washington, and the fact that we're seeing um, people who don't represent the group that they're fighting for, right? They're not trans women, but that they're standing up for it. And that's what we want to encourage, to me, and see. And we really do have to fight. This rising tide, it's not going to go away. You know what I mean, folks? Just because you have a new president does not mean that, it's over. And I really appreciate what you all are doing, very much so. And I'm actually excited that I'm going to get this under an hour so I can repackage this for Instagram, because I always go over the hour and I'm like, oh shit. Like it's like 109 when we finish. And I'm like, there's not 9 minutes I want to cut. So, Alex, I'm going to give you because we got about a minute and 15 seconds, and I want you to be able to just kind of, you know, unwind us here. And I just want to thank you so much for being able to jump in at the last minute and bring this out to folks. I really appreciate what you and all the team there are doing, and just keep up the great work. And anytime you guys need anytime you folks need anything I can do for you, I mean, you got my number. Just let me know. We'll jump on and we'll do what we need to do.
Thanks so much, Mac. Yeah, so just to recap, Stonewall Democratic Club today joined the Netflix employee resource group for the trans community and our allies at Netflix's campus to in a walkout to protest Ted Sanderosa's handling of the criticism that they received surrounding Dave Chappelle's most recent special. Um, and we think that the demands that trans Team Trans at Netflix has made of the organization are reasonable and achievable at an organization as nimble and as as resourceful as Netflix is. And I think that they need to do a better job of listening. They need to reach out, reach across the table, and meet and listen closely to the trans community at Netflix.
Well, that was very nice, Alex. And I wanted, I just want to say to all of, corporate America that it just doesn't have to be this way. Um, it just doesn't. And, you know, no animosity, nothing towards anybody, but I know sometimes we kind of all get caught on our side, and it can be really hard to unwind something that you've dug into when you shouldn't. But honestly, if you just say, fuck, we blew it, and we're going to sincerely try to make a difference and work with the groups that are talking about this, you know what? It'd be a good start. So I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, but for God's sakes, like I said, I've probably fucked up tonight in explaining and understanding and pointed out, and I will try to do better. And I think that's, for goodness sakes, folks, just stop sticking your feet, sticking your head in the sand and pull it out and make it better and make it right and work together. Alex, thank you again. Thanks to all the folks there. And
Thank you
I
so
am going to
much.
have to cut out a minute and 40 seconds, but I can find that because I'm sure I was talking too much. And great to meet you. I look forward to getting to talk to you again, as I said,
Look forward
and
to it.
anything you folks at all need, we'll be right here for you. So you take care, my friend. I appreciate you.
You do as well. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too. All right, everybody. This has been RevMac Live, the big interview. My name is Revolution McKinnis. Please, the comments will be there. They'll be live forever, so you can leave some comments. Hit me up on the DM if you want to talk about something. I'm always open to it. And again, thank you, Alex. Thanks everybody for watching.